rich man's world. I have turned the soul of this field.
All right, well, let's cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you, Alexa, for making this incredible chai.
Of course.
Not chai tea.
Not chai tea, because chai means tea.
Chai means tea in Hindu?
Yeah, Hindi.
Hindi? Okay, sorry. But the Jewish reference, because I have a lot of Jewish listeners, is that a lot of people say challah bread, and challah means bread. So it's bread, just like
Exactly.
tea. Okay, so this is a chai and that we eat with challah.
And if you're like at Starbucks and you want to get a chai latte, don't say chai tea latte. Say chai latte.
That's like a triple.
Exactly.
That's like, yeah.
Tea
But
latte.
this is amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's my mom's recipe.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, thank you for coming onto my podcast. Faking It Fam, I'm here with Alexa. We met when we were freshmen, probably at Stanford. So it's been a while. And you are one of the most profound people that I know on this campus. I mean it dearly, yes. And so I really wanted you to come onto my podcast and share your story. You have so many different parts of who you are that make you the incredible person that you are. But one part in particular that I would love to talk to you about is your trans story and how this whole process, this whole part of you exists, and the fact that you're so loud about it and open and honest is incredible for the trans community and the queer community and everything. And so if you're open to it, I would love for you to talk a little bit about just where you come from and your feelings as a child when it comes to just like your trans identity.
Yeah, I would absolutely love to. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So just start from the beginning, I guess.
Yeah.
So I was born and raised in Connecticut. Both my parents came over from India. They came for their education, and then they settled down in Connecticut, where they had my older brother and me. So I grew up in Connecticut, where it's very white, very rich, very privileged area. And so from the age of 5, I went to an all-boys school, all-boys private school, which is a very interesting vibe to try to assimilate into. My parents growing up really wanted me to blend in. So I never felt very connected to my Indian culture, particularly. I wanted to like have the chicken nuggets instead of like the samosas, for instance.
And they would make the samosas for you and you'd be like, I don't want this.
Yeah, like I would be like, I remember distinctly being like, I'm not Indian, I'm American. Which is like, I can be both. I am both.
Right.
But
because you wanted to blend in just like your parents wanted you to blend in, or
exactly.
just
Exactly. So this was an all boys school. So I didn't know anyone female my age. The only people I knew were the people in the Indian community, which there was one primary girl that I was close to who's 2 years older than me. And then my family's also very Christian. So there's a few girls in the church that I knew, but they were also not like exactly my age. So growing up, I had no one female my age, and the main female person I had in my life was my mom.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
As like a girl coming from an ultra-Orthodox Jewish community, it's so hard for me to imagine that, because I guess I was surrounded by women my entire life, you know, and the first time I talked to a boy was when I was 15. That wasn't like my brother or a family friend. And what I said to him was, "You're hot." That was like, I didn't know like how to respond.
Interact. Yeah, that's exactly how I felt when I hit high school, because during high school you integrate classes with the girls' school. So there's a sister school. So I similarly did not know how to interact, because I was just, I mean, girls were essentially another species to me. I just didn't know what they were. This is my cat, Miso.
Miso's our honorary guest.
Yes. Hello. So I guess flashback to like elementary school, middle school. I never really felt like one of the boys, but I didn't really have a concept of what gender was. So it wasn't like I'm not a boy, therefore I am a girl. It just felt like I am not like everyone else here. I just like don't get along. Maybe it's, I don't know, I just prefer to have indoor recess and play board games instead of go outside and wrestle and play football. So I didn't really have an internal sense of my gender identity, but I had an internal sense of this is not right.
Right. And so that the feeling of not right is just kind of in terms of the habits and like ways of behavior that were expected of boys, and that's what like didn't feel right with you, is more like behavioral things, or was it like anything else at that time?
Both behavioral and my connection to other boys.
Okay.
So yeah, I just like didn't really get along with them. Their interest didn't really interest me.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to describe. It's just like a gut feeling.
Yeah.
That has no like easy explanation for it.
Yeah.
So when I was like 15, entered the girls' school, that's around the time that I started questioning my gender. And from that point, I went back in my life and thought about any red flags or warning signs that I was trans before. And there were a few. There weren't, I didn't really fit the stereotype of like, I was 5 years old and I wanted to wear dresses and play with Barbies. That is like so many trans people's experiences, but it's not everyone's. One of the main ones I remember was my dad gave me the sex talk when I was around 10.
Yeah.
And I remember, you know, him explaining like, the woman carries the child. And, you know, explaining sex ed to me. And my first gut instinct was, can I switch sides? I feel like I'm on the wrong side.
Wow.
That was like my immediate reaction.
When you were 10 years old?
When I was 10 years old.
And did you know what like being trans even meant then?
No. I had no idea what that was. I didn't know gay people existed or trans people or I was 10. I wasn't very politically involved or
totally.
Exposed to anything. It was just like that very instinctual response of, oh, I should have been a woman and I should have been able to like produce children, as like that gut instinct there.
Yeah. Really interesting. Yeah. Did you feel like this experience that you were having was like a lonely experience, like only you were like this, or did you think it was normal for like boys to have those kinds of thoughts? Or
I didn't really think about it too much. Okay. I think I was more preoccupied with I don't feel like anyone, rather than, oh, there are other people that, because I was comparing myself to women in that sense of like pregnancy and whatnot, because there was no normative female role my age to compare myself to. So I just felt alone in general in life, not anything particular to gender in that context.
Yeah. All right, so now you're 15 years old and you're questioning your gender identity. Yeah.
So I guess I could talk about how I started to question things.
Yeah.
So we integrate classes with the girls. One more interesting anecdote about the all-boys school. It was a lot of people get recruited for sports from there. So I was mandated to play 3 sports per year.
Wow.
So I had to play like wrestling and football and lacrosse and all these things with the boys.
Oh my gosh.
So I chose the least contact sports out there. So I chose like cross country, squash, and tennis, which I actually did enjoy. But to me, masculinity has been linked with sports for a very long time. But yeah, anyways, going back to my discovery and questioning, when freshman year started, I found myself always hanging out at the girls' school. And I was just wondering, like, why is this happening? Like, you know, the guys from the boys' school would be like, oh, you know, he's such a player and he's getting all the girls. And the girls were like, oh, you know, like, we're suspicious of my intentions because I was just always hanging around them.
Yeah.
But as things progressed throughout the year, I just found myself always hanging out there whenever there was a choice between hanging out with the boys' school with the boys or the girls' school with the girls. I was just always at the girls' school. I remember they would like chalk my hair and paint my nails and all these really small expressions of femininity. And I just felt so comfortable and I felt like I could relate to them. And it was around that time that I first learned what the acronym LGBT was.
Wow.
And, you know, I stepped through the different letters and I came across T, trans. What is that? Which the definition is identifying with a gender that is not your gender that was assigned at birth. So I started to look into it, and basically was like, shit, I think that's me.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, and in terms of like you felt more that you're able to explore your feminine side at the all girls school. Were there any ways for you to explore your feminine side at the boys school too, or like was it very just like toxic masculinity or just masculine energy in general there?
It was very masculine energy.
Okay.
I remember the expectation was a lot of the talk would be around like sexualizing girls and so-called like locker room talk, which I wasn't particularly into, and there's no space to express anything other than masculinity in those spaces.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then once you realize that like maybe this is something that I identify with in terms of like the T, the trans, then what?
Yeah. My first response was, great, now what? Like, I didn't want to be trans. I don't think many people want to be trans.
Want to elaborate on that? Like, what do you mean by that? Is it like wanting to be, like for me, I'm bisexual. So it's like that kind of choice of like, I wish I didn't like girls, something like that? Or?
It's because for a lot of trans people, there is the experience of gender dysphoria, which basically means that dissonance and that discomfort that you get. Say, for instance, when I had like facial hair, right?
Yeah.
The discomfort I would get by having that facial hair was very painful and uncomfortable. Yeah. So when I say I wish I wasn't trans, I wish I could have either been happy with my facial hair and been happy as a boy, or have been born and raised as a like biological woman. Yeah. Instead, I have to go through this in between and be ridiculed by society and, make this whole transition, which is my choice on how much I want to take that. But for me, I care about presenting as a woman and having people treat me as a woman. Right. In order to do that, I have to make all these painful changes. And I would rather just be born physically represented that way than have to make these changes.
I think that right there is such an interesting antidote on what it means to go through the trans experience. And so many people don't hear. Yeah. Of that it's not my choice. Yeah. I was born this way. And if I didn't have to do this, then I wouldn't do it. And it's so interesting. Like another friend of mine who's also trans told me the exact same thing. And she said to me, if she can hit a button of like on or off that I want to feel this way, she would hit off. Yeah. She wouldn't want to have to go through this, but she does because this is who she is. Yeah. And I think that makes sense. If in the 1800s you didn't want to be gay, you want to hit the off button and just want to be attracted to women or men, you would hit that button, and I think that's like a very similar experience. And thank you for pointing that out and sharing that with people. Yeah. Yeah. That's really interesting.
I mean, if being trans was a choice, I would choose to not be trans personally because there's so much pain involved. So I'm not sure how people could say that it is a choice if I'm putting myself through so much pain or like a trend or whatever,
Totally. Yeah. So it's really, really, really interesting. Yeah. And so that's also why going through transitioning and also like where you are right now is even more commendable because you have to be brave. You have to stand up to society, your family, your expectations, and redefine your future and make it your own. And so like, once again, I'm so proud of you for everything that you've done. And you want to talk a little bit about what it was like to actually take that step and start your transition.
Yeah. So I think I'll go back to when I started coming out to people, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
So I realized I was trans when I was 15. And at that point, I coincidentally, not for trans-related reasons, I ended up moving to the public school. Co-ed public school in the middle of 10th grade. Yeah. And I had female friends and like they're just very integrated, and I still have like a close group of friends that I'm so close with to this day. And I came out to them one-on-one, which was a wonderful, wonderful support to have. The thing was my mom taught at the same school. So we both didn't want there to be a clash of her to get backlash from her peers and me to have those uncomfortable feelings of being discriminated against and uncomfortable experiences. So I came out to my mom at the beginning of the summer or right after junior year of high school. And, I had no idea which way it was going to go. My family is very Indian, very Christian.
Yeah.
So, they have a conservative lean to, at least I could perceive that. So I didn't know how it would go.
Right.
Basically, when I told my mom, she didn't really understand, but she said, at the end of the day, we still love you. You're our child,
right.
Which is all,
That's
I want to hear.
Yeah.
So it's now my senior year, and I've gone to like a gender therapist, and I've gone to a gender clinic.
Wow.
In which like they can start prescribing hormones. I made the decision to start hormones while I was in the closet for two reasons. One, I wanted to do something actively, even if I was still in the closet. I still wanted to like make an actual change.
Yeah.
And two, it would give me a boost per se once I did eventually come out. And that's not an uncommon experience for lots of trans people. Lots of trans people will start taking hormones in the closet, and my effects of hormones weren't immediately evident on the outside until like 6 or 7 months in, at which point I came out. So I went to, at the beginning of 2018, starting hormones, fully presenting as male, to September of 2018, presenting fully as female on campus. I mean, you met me back
I met
then.
you then. Yeah.
And a lot of people didn't know I was trans at that time.
Yeah.
So
I don't think I knew either, to be honest with you.
Really?
I don't think so. Maybe like after knowing you for a little bit, but just like seeing you around campus and things like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's wild after 1 year.
It was a really interesting experience, right? Because I was working at a hedge fund over that summer. So very like conservative, wearing like jacket and tie kind of vibe. I quit that job on July 13th, and I came out July 16th.
Wow.
I quit that job so that I could, come out and start transitioning socially. So it was a 2-month gap between being treated as a man and being treated as a woman, like not a trans woman, but as a woman by most people, because they couldn't tell I was trans, which gave me a lot of whiplash. And, I knew I was a woman. I always knew I was a woman, but next step is, okay, what kind of woman do I want to be? I never had that like middle school experimental phase of, trying on cringy outfits or trying to figure out who you want to be. I had to do that while I've been in college.
And what was it like? So did you have like long hair too? Or like, how did you approach the idea of what a woman should look like? You know, because even that, I guess you're saying you're exploring that a little bit, but there isn't one particular way that a woman looks like. And I guess for me, like, I would say that I prescribe to the female gender. But if I was given the choice of just being born without a prescription to a gender, I would probably choose that just because it doesn't tie me to any expectations. Like, hair length can be whatever I want, like pants bagginess can be whatever I want without any expectation. Like, that seems nice. If I decided to subscribe to the female gender just because, the woman gender, just because I want to just show that there can be so many different kinds of representations in this gender. Like, you could still have the short hair and you can still have the baggy pants, and we can redefine what it means to be a woman, you know? And so I guess like in terms of being trans, how do you think about those kinds of things of like redefining what it means to be a woman? Like, is it about the femininity of a woman that's attractive to you, or like what is it exactly that you want?
It's a hard question. Okay. I think trans people are not afforded the same privileges that a cis person does in terms of gender variance and exploration.
Okay.
As a trans woman, if I am to express hyperfemininity, have long hair, get my nails done, wear pink, whatever you want, right? Many people will say, oh, you're making a mockery of womanhood. Is this all you think womanhood is? Like doing your nails, doing, like growing your hair long or whatever, wearing heels. Like, that's not all there is to be a woman. And if I, go for more of like an androgynous look or go more on the masculine side, then a lot of people will say, oh, like you're not trying hard enough. You're not actually trans. You're just like a man masquerading.
Right.
So there's really no winning with it. I've shifted like all over the spectrum of like trying out different things. My freshman fall, I really was like, okay, my main goal was I want people to see me as a woman. So my freshman year, I would like paint my nails a lot. I was trying to grow my hair out a lot. I would wear like blouses and dresses mostly. I would wear like heels. And a lot of that I did like. A lot of that I still like. Like I wear blouses. I like florals and stuff.
Right.
But yeah, then I got like my ears pierced and stuff. But then I was like, I actually like more like alternative style stuff. So I would wear like ripped jeans. I would wear like edgy t-shirts and stuff. And just like a very stark difference just to try out that as well. And now I kind of float between different aesthetics, I guess. But yeah, I think to label any one expression as like, this is how to be a woman, it's very reductive to like womanhood in general. I don't think womanhood can be represented by any one expression of like, this is how you be a woman for cis people or trans people.
Right. Yeah, I think that's very interesting. And to me, what it means to be a woman is kind of to just be a part of this community of people, for the most part, that have these shared experiences. Good experiences of, just like, I don't know. But honestly, what comes to mind are unfortunately bad experiences, like sexual assault and, just certain experiences that women face more frequently than men, for the most part, but brings us together and creates this very special, unique, strong bond that I'm so grateful to be a part of. And I'm curious, what are your thoughts on what it means to be a woman? Yeah,
it's a very nebulous concept, I think. And I think the more you try to pinpoint a definition of what womanhood is, the more lost you get. I think it's more useful to define what a woman is by the experiences you have rather than a dictionary definition.
Totally.
I really resonate with what you're saying about feeling womanhood as like being a part of a community of like a sisterhood or whatnot. I was part of a sorority for a while.
Right. We
were both in.
I was there for like 3 days.
Yeah.
But it was good because I got to kick out.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Throwback.
Yeah, throwback.
Akayo, let's go.
Yeah.
There's like a hand sign.
I can't remember how to do it.
I don't know. It's like an A.
I think it's that. I'm pretty sure it's that. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
This is a new faking it logo. So if you do this, that means you're part of the faking it fam.
Exactly. But yeah, like you're saying, like I have been able to connect with other women on experiences like sexual harassment for, people on the street meeting me as a woman and catcalling me. Like that is a experience that women tend to have.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's fair to say that I don't belong to that womanhood identity if I'm having those same experiences of like joy and camaraderie and also like pain and such.
Yeah.
I think there are like women's issues that apply to like, cis women that don't apply to me. And I will never claim those struggles as myself. For instance, like reproductive rights or like period equality and such, or like abortion and such, right? Those will never impact me in the same way that they impact cis women, or people with uteruses, right? But I don't think that difference discounts all the other ways in which I have the same experience as a cis woman.
Yeah, very interesting. And then if you want to talk about this, no pressure, obviously, but I know that you did another layer of confirming your womanhood to yourself. Do you want to talk about it at all?
Yeah.
And what that was like for you?
Yeah. So I, in July, I got bottom surgery, vaginoplasty. There are, I think, a common term that a lot of people mistakenly used is like the surgery or have you gotten the operation. There's so many different surgeries that trans people can get. There is like facial feminization surgery. There's for like trans feminine people. There's like breast augmentation, etc. There's orchiectomies, which is removal of the testicles, but not anything else. So I got a vaginoplasty. And yeah, it's been a wonderful decision. The
so
recovery,
you got a vagina.
Exactly.
You got a pussy.
I do have a pussy. What is it?
That's awesome.
A Gucci coochie.
A Gucci coochie. You got a Gucci coochie.
I do have a Gucci coochie.
Yeah. That's awesome.
It's really cool. It's a lot of trans people will get I'll talk on the perspective of trans feminine people getting bottom surgery. A lot of trans femme people will get bottom surgery because they look in the mirror and cannot stand what they see, or they take a shower and cannot stand what they see, right? For me, it was never that level of dissonance. So I spent like 7 years maybe deciding whether or not I wanted bottom surgery because, I would look in the mirror and be like, meh, like it is what it is. I'm not crazy about it. But then there would be other situations where I would be trying to wear a bikini and that wouldn't really work out too well. And I would feel like really shitty about that. So I would have like these mixed experiences. So, it's like, oh, am I dysphoric enough about this to get surgery? Like what level of discomfort warrants surgery? The reason I got surgery in the end was all of those categories that I'm talking about would become better after surgery. So say I'm looking in the mirror before surgery, it's like, oh, okay, like I don't really look at that part, but I'm not like distressed about it. But now I look in the mirror and it's like, okay, you're looking cute. Yeah, like I'm feeling myself, right? And now like I've tried on a bikini. I haven't gone to the beach yet, but I really want to. And I tried on a bikini and I was like, okay, she looking cute.
That Gucci coochie shape,
So it's not always like it's not always about like I hate what I have before. I need to be fixed. I need to be like in the right body. It's more of like it's more complex than that. It's like if I get this, there will be lots of areas of my life that will be improved. Right,
totally. And I think another interesting point have you seen the movie Beaks of Travesty? It's really interesting. It's about like trans feminine people who don't want to do any hormones or anything, and like they're like, we're still trans even though we don't take these drugs and even though we don't do these things, and like doing the surgery or not doesn't confirm any aspect of a trans person's identity. It's like you said, it's very personal, it's very complex, and it should be for the person themselves, the trans person, if they want to do it. It doesn't mean that they are a woman or not if they do it or not, you know? And so I really like what you said about how it was just all these little things put together that made you feel a certain way, not how you're trying to show yourself a certain way.
Exactly.
Which is really beautiful.
Yeah, for me, I think there are so many different surgeries and different transitional things. You can go on hormones, like you're saying. I personally did voice therapy. So my voice used to be like a bass, and now this is just my normal talking voice now.
Wow. What is voice therapy?
So so basically testosterone, it lowers your vocal cords by expanding the vocal cords, but estrogen unfortunately does not shrink vocal cords. So transmasculine people that take testosterone, they don't really have to do voice therapy because their voice will naturally drop as though it's going through puberty. But for me and other trans feminine people that take estrogen, we have to train our voices to speak higher.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a very interesting process.
That's so interesting.
It's very interesting.
So you made your voice kind of sound like more feminine in that way,
exactly.
or like higher.
Exactly.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So can you do the same for the opposite? Can I like train my voice to be deeper?
It's a bit harder, right? Because
that's like the Theranos woman who just like speaks like this all the time. Like you can kind of do it if you want.
Exactly. Like Steve Jobs impersonator.
Right.
But
it's so interesting.
Yeah, because if you think about it like structurally, to have say you have like a xylophone, say you have like a xylophone or something, right? Okay. The longer the bar is, the deeper the note is, right? Okay. A small bar will be a very light ding, right? So think about your vocal cords as one of those bars, right? The longer the bar is, the deeper your voice can go. Yeah. So for me, my vocal cords, because I went through male puberty, they grew very big. So the point of voice therapy for me to like raise pitch and timbre, which is like resonating in your chest versus your head, is to train my muscles to flex to make them shorter.
Right.
Whereas for transmasculine people, you can't stretch it like to pull it apart and grow it without hormones.
Is there any like gender reassignment surgery for like women transitioning to men? Like, is there any way to like get a penis if you wanted to? There is.
There's many different surgeries. I'm not too educated on the different ones. There is the primary of what you would think is phalloplasty, where they take a skin graft from another location on your body, most commonly the forearm or the thigh. It's like a giant section of skin. And then they kind of shape it into a penis and then, and
does it have like the same
sensation. There's also, it's interesting, you can have a testicular implant that when you like squeeze it, you can get an erection.
What?
It's wild.
That's so cool. Okay, because I wasn't sure if it was just like there's a lot of just research and innovation being done for men wanting to transition to women. You know, because like, you know, just like men always get whatever, you know, like in that sense, versus like if a woman wants to transition into a man, if it's harder. Or
the science is way further ahead on the trans feminine side. On vulvoplasties, vaginoplasties. Also because, you know, these procedures have been done for like over 100 years. I believe. And procedures like this are also done on intersex people and cis women who have different conditions. But the phalloplasty is a lot more intensive. There's also other transmasculine surgeries I'm not as familiar with, but there are other transmasculine like genital surgeries that do happen.
And then in terms of the last thing that I want to talk about is just politics. I think this is such a polarized topic, being trans as opposed to being gay or queer. Like, it's not as polarized, you know? It's kind of like gay rights is more accepted in this country. Trans rights are not there. Do you want to just talk as somebody, like a member in the community, what your knowledge is on this? Like, maybe why you think it's so polarized, and I don't know, what your thoughts are.
I think part of it is it's way easier to conceptualize loving someone of the same gender rather than being a different gender. Because most people in this world, most like cis heterosexual people in this world have romantic attraction and know what that feeling is like. So to substitute like a man loving a woman with a man loving a man it's the same emotion. But the internal notion of like, I'm a man, right? Or I'm a woman is way more of a nebulous, abstract concept that's hard to like pin down. You see a lot of rhetoric being thrown around of like, what is a woman, right? There's not much around like, what is being gay, right? It's like you love someone of the same gender, and there's that direct analog. I think that's a big piece.
Interesting. Cool. Any other thoughts? Or if not, that's fine too.
I'm thinking. I think, I mean, when you look at gay rights movements, trans people have been historically excluded from those. You know, you look at like Marsha P. Johnson, Sylvia Rivera, trans activists in the 60s and 70s, I believe, that were very prominent and fought for everyone's rights. And yet the movement was co-opted by a lot of like cis gay men, particularly cis gay white men, and forgot about these revolutionaries that fought for everyone's rights. So the majority of the like LGBT rights movement in the 70s, 80s, 90s, etc., were solely focused around sexual minorities, primarily around like gay and lesbian individuals. And only is it recently that being trans has come more into the public awareness.
Cool. Awesome. And then the last two questions I ask every single one of my guests is, one, do you have any resources to share with people if they want to learn more about trans, anything, or any resources in general, or books, your favorite books, or anything you want to share in that regard?
Yeah. Let's see. There's tons of LGBT organizations out there. There's GLAAD is one. I know there's I know my parents utilize PFLAG a lot. Cool. Parents and families of lesbian and gay people. Cool. And if you're a trans woman or trans feminine person, one of the books that got me through so much is called To My Trans Sister. And it's like a bunch of letters from highly successful trans women to like younger selves. And that really got me through a lot.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And then the last question I ask is, how have you faked it? Because this podcast is called Faking It. It could be faking an orgasm. It could be faking answer on a test. It could be anything related to just being a badass bitch, you know? So, I mean, if you don't have an answer, that's fine too. But if you
have I faked it?
Yeah.
The easiest answer is I pretended I was a man for 18 years, right? That's faking it.
That is faking it. That's very impressive.
Yeah.
That is very impressive.
Fake it until you don't have to fake it anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
Fake it until you make it. Okay. And make it Alexa. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming to my podcast.
Thank you for having me.